All right. So, hi, everybody, and welcome to How to Forge Fake News and Spawn Flawless Fisheries. I hope you like this opening slide. It was made with the website that you can see the watermark up in the top right corner, breakyourownnews.com, and also Bing AI to make the Rhino newscaster. And if you're wondering why there's Rhino on it, it's because if you don't know who I am, my handle online is White Rhino. My name is Michael Allen, and I'm a pen tester and red teamer at BHIS, where I'm currently on the continuous pen testing team, or anti-SOC. And I do a lot of attacks to try and get initial access into our customer environments. And I also teach a class on specifically the initial access portion of a red team exercise. That's called Red Team Initial Access. And it's everything that I currently do to break into well-defended environments, because those are all of our red team customers are generally very well-defended environments. And the initial access portion is all about, at that part where we're trying to get in on our own and not just be granted access like an assumed compromise phase. That class is available through Anti-Siphon, and today's topic comes out of that course material. So in the class, there's maybe 5 slides that are about what I'm going to be talking about today. And this is something that I thought would be beneficial to both technical and non-technical audiences. To the technical audiences, especially the skills of actually doing the techniques that I'm talking about today. But to non-technical audiences, like my own, like less technical friends and family members, knowing about this stuff, it kind of raises awareness and makes people a little bit less trusting of stuff that they see online. So I think that's important. So with that, I'll jump into it here, and this is the 2 pieces I've got it broken down into. As I mentioned, it's for non-technical and technical audiences. So part 1 is going to be forging fake news, and that's the part that's for the less technical audiences, but hopefully is just kind of raises the awareness of everybody. And then part 2 is going to be specifically for if we want to do this as pen testers or red teamers or other attackers, how we would actually leverage this technique for ourselves. So let's kick off part 1 here, forging fake news. This whole thing, the idea for like the topic for this talk came to me as I was scrolling X one day, and maybe this has happened to you. I would scroll through there and see these news headlines, and if I tap on one, or if I'm on a computer, I click on one, and instead of going to the article that the headline is referring to, I just get a bigger version of the screenshot that I'm already seeing in the person's feed. And this is like not a fake headline here or anything. This is just an example I pulled off of X as I was making the slides, just to show this point that, there's a difference between, when someone shares a link on social media or something, and there's a preview that you click on and it takes you to an article, versus when they share just a screenshot. And this has become a real pet peeve of mine, because I see a lot of news like headlines and other things that people post online that are they generate an emotional response. It's might be something I care about or whatever, and like I kind of am slightly invested in whether that's true or not, and I can't easily tell if it's true or not. And it occurs to me that maybe less wary folks out there would be more likely to be taken in by this, because immediately when I see something like this makes me very, very suspicious personally, because I know how easy it is to fake that. So, as I mentioned, the topic of this section of the talk is forging fake news. So I want to talk briefly about, what I'm referring to as fake news in this talk. So the definition of fake news from Wikipedia is false or misleading information, misinformation, including disinformation, propaganda, and hoaxes, presented as news. And a really common example of this that I think people would probably think of immediately whenever we think of fake news is misleading headlines that are actually real headlines, but they're just misleading in some way. The first example here being like headlines that use clickbait tactics to get you interested in something. So the headline kind of sensationalizes whatever the story is going to be about, but it doesn't really, live up to that sensationalization. And they use phrases like, "You won't believe, whatever thing," or "what happened next will surprise you," or such and such thing they don't want you to know. Like there's always some miracle cure that they don't want you to know, or some other thing they don't want you to know. And if it's not clickbait tactics, which I absolutely hate, by the way, it's like some kind of framing or spin. And I wanted to stay away from anything too terribly political in this, even though it's a talk about fake news. So I used a really old example of this, which is there was an advertisement a long time ago that said more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. And the thing that they were trying to do was to frame that advertisement in the way that led the person reading it to believe that Camel cigarettes were somehow healthier than other cigarettes, which of course, all cigarettes were terrible for you. But they couldn't come right out and say, Camel cigarettes are more healthy for you. And often the headlines we see that are framed in a way like that, they frame someone or something, some topic in a positive or a negative light, depending on whatever the agenda is of the person that's writing the headline. But then you go and you actually read the story, and the story is not quite so biased one way or the other because, maybe it can't be due to journalistic standards of the organization that's publishing it or whatever. But the headline itself is still pretty misleading. So anyway, that's like the general definition of fake news. But in this talk, I'm going to be talking specifically about just one kind of fake news, which is a different kind. It's forged screenshots that are shared online. So this could be a screenshot of anything on a computer or a mobile device. Often these are of like news headlines. They might be of AI chat bot interactions, or they could be real chat conversations or text message conversations or things like that. Or posts that people, that others have made on social media that are then being manipulated and making this person look like they're saying something they might not be saying. I'm not saying that all screenshots that are shared online or on social media are fake by any means. I'm sure that most of them are probably trustworthy, and most of them are probably just people trying to share stuff in a convenient way. But this stuff just makes me really wary as someone that frequently fakes content during attacks, like phishing attacks, and knows how easy it is. And I think that knowing how easy it is to do this kind of thing will actually make people more wary of it who are not necessarily a technical audience. And letting them know that there's a very low barrier to create these fake screenshots that look very convincing. Literally anyone watching this talk right now could do this, and I'll show you how. And they're very convincing, especially when they are dealing with something that's like emotionally charged in some way, an emotionally charged topic or context, or to an audience that's just not aware of the ease with which these are manipulated. So for some examples here to kick this off, I've got first some fake screenshots that are easy to spot. This one here is very easy to spot. This is a fake screenshot, 100% fake, of John Strand tweeting that me, White Rhino, is his hero. And there are some dead giveaways that this is fake. I'm going to point out that the most obvious giveaway is that he would never say this. This is completely out of character and obviously false. So, that's kind of funny because of that. But so that makes it a little bit easier to see that it's a fake screenshot. But also there's a bunch of other stuff that makes it obvious and easy to see it's a fake screenshot. I edited this image in Microsoft Paint, the most basic and terrible image editor that you could edit anything with. And because of that, it's got a lot of artifacts in the image that show that it's fake, such as when I use the eraser in Microsoft Paint, I didn't make the background of my eraser tool the same as the background of the page that this was originally on. So you can see all the marks where I erased the text that was originally there. You can see that the text that I added in with an image editing tool has like different pixelation than the other text in the screenshot. It's not quite lined up right. The alignment is not the way it should be in a real tweet or post on X. And the font and colors, actually don't match quite right either. So these are all things that happen whenever you actually edit an image in an image editing tool that leave behind evidence that it's an edited image. But other screenshots that have been edited may not be so obvious. So this is the exact same post in John's feed on X that I edited to create this fake screenshot. And this one looks much more convincing. The text all looks like it's the text that belongs on that website as far as the font size, the alignment, everything else like that. The pixelation being the same. There are no image artifacts or any other obvious signs of editing here. And I tried to make the message a little bit more plausible this time. So I used some language that I had seen in other posts in John's feed, or that I had heard him say. Like I've heard him use the phrase or the word "fantastic" when describing things. So I used the word "fantastic" in there. The last sentence here, "Go sign up for it now." That actually was just a slight variation of what was in this original post, that where he was saying "Go buy something now." It was some other product or something. I actually didn't pay much attention to what it was. I was just looking for something that I could manipulate. But doing those kind of things make this way more convincing than the original image that I showed there. And these same kind of tactics and the same process, it doesn't just apply to social media. So here on the left, I've got a real article on the Wall Street Journal. China launches mission to the hidden side of the moon. And on the right, I've got the exact same article, or screenshot of the exact same article, but it's been edited. So it says China discovers alien life on the hidden side of the moon. Now, of course, that's pretty hard to believe. So again, the context here is such that, this is not so believable. But, maybe in a different context, if we were saying something different in this text on the screenshot, it would be believable. Same thing for, more interactive content on websites like ChatGPT. I've seen a lot of screenshots online where people are either showing off, so-called hacks of LLMs like ChatGPT, where they're doing some kind of prompt injection or some other thing to get it to spit out some output that's just like wildly inappropriate, or not the intended output of ChatGPT, or they ask it some questions to try and demonstrate some bias. And those situations, those outputs, they may be real, but they also might not be real. It's really impossible to tell from just a screenshot. So to demonstrate that here, I've got two different prompts that I gave to ChatGPT in the same conversation. But the second prompt here, the response has been edited. So the first prompt, I'm saying in a sentence or two, "Tell me why dogs are better than cats." And it gives me back a good answer about, why dogs are so great. And then I say in a sentence or two, "Tell me why cats are better than dogs." And it tells me it can't fulfill that request. If this was a different topic that I was talking about, maybe something political, then that would show some form of bias. But this is not a real screenshot. I faked this. So I want to show off how easy it is to do this, to do exactly what I've done in those last screenshots. For anybody, literally anyone who is watching this, it's terribly simple. And I think knowing how simple it is will make you that much more wary of things that you see online. And of course, there are not just screenshots that we see online that we have to think about, but also anything these days, videos, whatever, because there's so many ways to fake stuff. But this is just a very simple example. I'm trying to get switched over to my demo video here, so bear with me. Here we go. So the demo video is up now. Hopefully you can see that on screen, maybe. I don't know, Ryan, am I sharing this right? I don't see it on my screen. Okay, there we go. And I'll click play. So all I'm going to do here in this demo is open the regular Chrome browser, just like everybody probably has on their computer. And I'm going to an arbitrary news article on CNN. I've tried to pick something, again, not too divisive to use as an example here. So we got a regular, news article about summer movies. And what I'm doing right now is I just right-clicked on just some white space in the browser, like on the web page there, that's not got anything for me to interact with. And in the menu that pops up, I go down and I choose Inspect from that menu. And when I click on Inspect, what that does is it opens the web developer tools that are built into all the major browsers right now. Chrome opens this on the right-hand side of the browser window by default. So the first thing that I'm personally going to do, because it just makes it a little bit easier for me to read all those small lines on the right side of the screen there, is I'm going to click on the little three dots up at the top of the developer tools and just change the dock side to the bottom of the screen. So that makes it a little bit easier for me to read whenever I'm doing this. and it looks a little bit more like the Firefox browser that I do this in more typically, and the second demo is in. So once I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is there's this arrow. It's like an arrow in a little dotted box on the top left corner of the web developer tools down there. And I click on that arrow, and that lets me select any of the elements on the page and see what the HTML source is of those elements once I select them down in the lower pane. So I've just clicked on the upper headline there after clicking that arrow. And then I go and I mouse over that line that's highlighted in blue at the bottom of the screen. So clicking on the headline, cause that line to get highlighted in blue down in the lower pane. And then whenever I put my mouse over that highlighted blue line, that actually highlights the headline up there. So I can just confirm that this is what I am targeting, what I'm trying to edit, because I want to edit this headline here. After figuring out, which line it is and getting all that right, I click on a little triangle next to it. That just expands the HTML element. And now I can see the text of the headline in the HTML source in that lower pane. And so this is actually going to let me edit that headline. All I got to do is double click on that text. I just did that. And now I can backspace and I can just type in a brand new headline there. And you won't see this in this case until I get done typing the headline. So I'm going to modify the headline and make it say something, silly, different than what it says currently. Like maybe Hugh Jackman returns as the Yellow Badger in this summer's hottest rom-com. So once I'm finished typing that terribly slowly, I hit enter and it pops up as the new headline up at the top of the window. And it looks just like the old headline. As before, there's no image artifacts or anything like that because this is actually on the page. This is actually all happening in my browser instead of being some form of image editing. And I can just use any screenshotting tool to take a screenshot of this and put it on social media or whatever to post it online. To do that right now, I'm going to press the print screen button in Windows, and that opens up the screenshotting tool. And then I select the portion of the page that I want to screenshot. And then it pops up a little notification down at the bottom so I can open it in snipping tool and do any other editing or whatever I want to do. So that's a pretty legit looking screenshot. But one thing you might think is, well, most of the screenshots I see online in this context where people have shared a headline or something, they look like they've been taken on a mobile device. And like you don't have access to these tools on a mobile device. So you can't do this on a mobile device, right? Well, it's actually really easy to make a fake screenshot that looks like it was taken on a mobile device as well. I open up the web developer tools again, just right clicking on the background of the web page there, selecting inspect. I get that pane back up at the bottom of the screen. And this time what I'm going to do, there's a second button or icon in the developer tools at the top left of that lower pane. And it looks like a couple of little rectangles. What it's trying to illustrate is a mobile device sitting in front of a computer. So the smaller rectangle being that mobile device. If I click on that icon, then it's going to change the resolution that the page is displayed at to the resolution of a mobile device. And I can actually select using the menu at the top of this window from any of several different mobile devices that I want it to look like I've opened this page on. So I select a Samsung device to look like a Samsung phone, change the zoom to 100%, and then clicking the three little dots at the top right, there's even a screenshot button built right into the browser. So I can just click capture screenshot, and I'm going to get a screenshot that looks like it was taken on a mobile device. There's not any borders or anything like that to give away that this was made on a computer instead of on a phone. And this, looks like it could be any of those screenshots that we've seen online. So hopefully this demonstrates to anybody out there that wasn't aware of how easy it is to fake these screenshots, that it is terribly easy and literally anyone can do it. Let me jump back to my slides here. There we go. And looking to see if they've popped back up. Waiting for it. Ryan, are my slides on screen? I don't see them.
They are up.
Oh, they are? Okay. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong window. All right. So what we learned from this, how do we keep from getting fooled? Number one, get in the habit of requiring proof before you believe anything that you see online, or really anything else for that matter. Any kind of incoming communication, that goes for incoming phone calls, emails, text messages, and physical mail too, because I've been using that a lot lately to phish people, and it works pretty well because people aren't expecting it. So just get in the habit of requiring proof before you believe anything that somebody else is presenting to you. And then number two, notice when you're getting emotionally hijacked. Emotional hijacking is something that we use frequently in phishing attacks and other social engineering attacks to get people to basically turn off the part of their brain that checks stuff out and requires proof and is more scrutinizing and thinks things through, and instead make their decisions based on emotions, those quick gut reaction or knee-jerk decisions. And in the context of news articles that we're seeing online or other things like that, a lot of times I for one see screenshots that kind of upset me, and maybe may sway my opinion in one way or another, or more one way or the other. And at scale, that's a terrible thing, to change the opinions of a mass of people and maybe get us to believe things that aren't even actually true. So watch out for whenever you're getting emotionally hijacked, and make that actually a red flag to signal you to re-engage that logical part of your brain and say, is this really what it appears to be? And then number three, in the case of these screenshots or any article that you see on social media, always look for a link. Don't believe anything you haven't verified. If the screenshot links to a real source, it's much more likely to be legit. Like if there's a link on there to CNN.com and you can click that link and you can visit CNN.com and see the original article, then it's probably a real article because you're looking at it. And this goes for anything that, might come into your awareness, through other communications as well. Always just try and verify everything. Don't believe anything you haven't verified. If you get a call, someone purporting to be a loved one that is in jail and they need you to bail them out, watch out for that. People are making AI calls where the voice is impersonated, and they're very convincing, and they're stealing a lot of people's money doing those things. So yeah, these really apply to all sorts of situations where you might get social engineered. Now that pretty much wraps up the kind of low technical level conversation about this. So in part two, we're going to get into how do we use this for phishing, and also why do we use this for phishing? If you've ever created a phishing landing page manually, I mean like totally manually, where you maybe wrote the HTML yourself, maybe you took some screenshots that you tried to edit by hand, things like that. These are all things that I used to do back in the day before we had so many phishing tools that we have now, and also things that I've done in cases where those phishing tools failed to correctly clone whatever website that it was that I was trying to target, or didn't make it easy for me to edit the website that they did clone. All those situations present problems for us. We end up with like artifacts in the images. The images don't look perfect, just like in that ugly screenshot that I made at the beginning. We have to do trial and error to guess, maybe what font size we're supposed to be using, especially if you're not a web developer or web designer, which I have never been very good at. I have made a few websites over the years, but they never came out very well. And I'm mainly only good at when I'm phishing. And when you're making it manually like that, also all the other links and menus and stuff on the page tend not to work. So on a lot of the websites we see, especially big corporate websites like maybe a Microsoft website or something like that, there's usually a menu across the top or a footer across the bottom. There might be interactive stuff where you put your mouse over something and a new item on the screen appears, or new menu options are available or whatever. Those are things that are difficult to duplicate when we're doing it manually. But using this same method that I just showed for making the screenshots, well, we can create a phishing page in which all that stuff is still intact. In addition to being just a perfect looking clone that doesn't have any of those artifacts or anything, all the menus still work. All of the links still work. There's really not any HTML editing that we have to do unless we choose to. And it just makes our life way easier as attackers and lets us focus on things that are more important when it comes to social engineering, like the content rather than the page design, at least more important to us, because that's the thing that we really intend to change on the page is what the page is telling the recipient to do or the viewer to do. And that's also really important in situations where your target speaks a different language than you do. This is something that came up on a real red team exercise. And this is where I really saw the value of this method of generating a landing page for the first time. And it was, we were doing a red team for a company that had offices all over the world. And for whatever reason, I think maybe they had some concerns about a particular one of their offices or something like that. They thought people were not following procedure like they were supposed to, but they wanted us to target a specific office in a Spanish-speaking country with all of our social engineering attacks. So if we were doing phone calls, if we were doing email phishing, whatever we were doing, they wanted the social engineering attacks to target this office that was 100% Spanish speaking workers. And I don't speak Spanish. And the other tester who was on the test with me also didn't speak Spanish. So this was kind of a problem for us. We knew it was going to take a bunch of time and effort to do a good job of this. So using this method, it actually gave me a really quick way of eliminating some of the work that we might have had to do. What you're seeing on the screen is the real WebEx download page. And we had identified that the company that we were targeting used WebEx internally for like internal meetings, webcasts, whatever, any kind of video conferencing that they did internally, they used WebEx for that. So we wanted to, as our ruse, we wanted to send a message to someone in the company and tell them there's a WebEx update that you need to install on your computer. And to do that, we needed to have a web page that they could go to and download that supposed update. So fortunately, WebEx has a Spanish language version of their website. And that makes total sense that they would. It makes it really convenient for us. So we went to the website, as you see here, and this was the website that I wanted to clone with some minor modifications to make our landing page. There's a bunch of stuff on this page that is not ideal for a pretext. This is the page to download WebEx, for the first time as an end user. There's a 32-bit version and a 64-bit version. There's a QR code to scan with your phone, which is not at all helpful in the context of the ruse. Also, the link to download it on the App Store was not at all helpful in the context of the ruse. But by editing this page with the browser's web developer tools, I was able to change it from what you saw there to what you see on this screenshot. And the menus and stuff at the top, they were actually still there, but I didn't happen to get a screenshot from that project where I showed the menus. But a lot of the elements on the page were gone. So the extra download button was gone. The download with your mobile device items, the QR code and the link and things like that were all gone. And we were able to just focus 100% of our attention on getting the correct Spanish language instructions on the page, which were different from the text that was on the page initially. The new text that's on here says, if I remember this correctly, because unfortunately I still don't speak Spanish, it says, I believe if the download doesn't start automatically, click the button below to download the update. And then the text in the white section says, download the WebEx update or download the update of WebEx, I think. What we ended up having to do, we did fortunately get another member of our team to translate it to Spanish for us, who was a Spanish speaker, but they didn't have to spend a ton of time translating every possible piece of text on the page. They just had to translate these two little sections here for us and make sure that was 100% believable to someone who's a native Spanish speaker. And then we didn't have to worry about that at all. This made our life much, much easier. Now, there's a couple things that I did here that I haven't talked about yet, like removing elements from the page. So I will get into that more now, since that's more relevant for phishing. So there are some more web developer functions in those web developer tools that you should know about. And the first one is delete element or delete node. Depending on which browser you're using, they call it different things. Chrome calls it one and Firefox calls it the other. But what this does is it removes an entire HTML element and all of its children from the page. So everything that HTML element contains, it removes it from the page. So if there's like a table on there as an example, all the content inside the table, if you delete the table, all that content inside of it will also be gone. Or you could just choose one individual, item, one sale inside of the table, and you could just delete that one thing. Then the second web developer function to know is edit as HTML. And this lets you actually edit the HTML elements and the HTML code live in the browser. And what this really comes in handy for is changing things like links or images where there's a URL that points to one image and we want it to point to a different image, or maybe we want to make something look slightly different. We might want to highlight part of the page, so we change the color or something like that to make it look just a bit different than it originally looked. And we still get the live preview in the browser, so we're not going back and forth to our text editor, making a change, saving, then refreshing the page, hoping we pick the right element out of that big blob of HTML that we're looking at and trying to dig through. And then the last one here to know is the console. And this was like probably the coolest one, also known as the JavaScript console. And there are a couple of commands that I learned that really basically turn your web page into a document that you can edit just like you were editing a document in, say, Microsoft Word. The first command is document.designmode equals, and then in quotes, the word on. And this enables design mode, obviously. And that design mode is what turns the page into a document that's editable by the person using the browser at that time. The second command, document.body.spellcheck equals false, that turns off the automatic spell check in the browser. Because what will happen when you turn on design mode is, since you just basically turned your website into a document you can edit, then your browser may, depending on which browser you're using, try to automatically spell check all the content. So anything it thinks is misspelled is going to get a red squiggly line underneath it. So running the second command turns that off, so you don't get a bunch of red squiggly lines all over the page while you're trying to edit your phishing page. Now, the other thing I haven't talked about yet is how we actually save our changes to the document after we've made our edits, because everything's just live in the browser at this point. There's an extension for Firefox that works perfect for this. It's called Save Page WE, and it saves the page and everything in it in a single HTML file. And this is really beneficial for a couple of reasons. One is it makes deploying the landing page to a web server or like a storage bucket or whatever very easy. You just have to deploy one file, and none of the links, the JavaScript references, the style sheets, anything like that in the page is broken after you upload it and you change where that exists on the internet. So that's very handy. That makes a big difference for us whenever if you're used to using tools like maybe wget or something, that when you clone a website with it, it might not change all those references correctly. Another one that comes in really handy is uBlock Origin, which I just highly recommend for browsing the internet at all. Anyway, I don't know how anybody browses the internet without an ad blocker. It drives me nuts anytime I have to use a browser that doesn't have an ad blocker. But if you happen to be editing a page that has ads on it and you don't want the ads to show up on your landing page whenever you actually do your real phishing attack, if you install an ad blocker like uBlock Origin on your browser and you do your edits while the ad blocker is enabled, then the ads will be gone from the page. So that makes it it was really handy. Actually, that's why I installed it whenever I was doing the demo of doing the screenshots, because on CNN there were ads, and those ads were getting in the way and interfering with me editing the page and making a legit looking screenshot. So it's made it significantly easier, and that's the main reason I actually included that in here. So here's the final process that we end up with for doing all of these edits is: number one, install your ad blocker if you choose to, like uBlock Origin, to block ads on the page. Number two, select a website that you want to mimic. 3, edit the page with the developer tools. 4, save the page with Save Page WE. 5, edit any remaining links, or also you can add extra features if you want with a text editor. A couple that I frequently add are some JavaScript to do an automatic download, or some JavaScript to actually change the behavior a little bit if they visit the page with a mobile device, and this is a phish that's targeting just desktop devices. Then I'll make it display a warning message that says, you can't download this update on a mobile device. Please do it on your computer, because like that WebEx update, that wouldn't have worked on a mobile device if it was a payload we had built for a Windows computer. And then number 6, save the file and upload it to a web server, just like you would any other landing page that you would build. So now that I've outlined that process, I'll demo this for you, and I'll try and share my window correctly this time. Let's see. Share screen. And there is the screen share. Hopefully everybody can see it. I don't know why I've lost the preview myself, so I can't tell if everybody can see it. I'll assume everyone can. And I'll click play and we'll get this demo going. All right, so all I'm doing right now is running the Firefox web browser. I'm actually going to go through the process of installing the extensions on this demo. So I go to addons.mozilla.org in the Firefox browser. I search for uBlock Origin, and that's the first one I'm going to install. And I just click the add button up the top of the browser. I allow it to run in private windows just in case I accidentally open up a private window. And I check to make sure that I've got the extension pinned to my toolbar. I'm going to make sure that they're both pinned up there, just so it's real convenient for me to be able to access and I don't have to dig through the extensions menu. Then the next thing I do is I type in save page WE to the same add-ons website. I add that to Firefox. So this is just, the process of adding those extensions is exactly what you would do if you were doing the same thing. And they're up there and pinned to my toolbar now. Now that I've installed the extensions, I'll go find a website that I want to use or that I want to mimic for my landing page. So in this case, I'm going to use the download page for Adobe Reader because it's a PDF reader that everybody uses. And, it makes a pretty good ruse to tell somebody they got to download an update for Adobe. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck that box right there that says install McAfee, because even though it had nothing to do with this demo when I was recording the video, I did it out of force of habit because I always uncheck that box. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the background of the website, and in the menu, I click inspect. I get the same browser developer tools, web developer tools that I get in Chrome, basically, that pane pops up at the bottom. And I'm just scrolling down the page here to show all this other stuff, all this other content that's on this page. Some of this has nothing to do with my ruse, and I want to remove it. Other stuff is very helpful and makes the page look legit. So the footer that's down at the bottom of this page and has some links and stuff on it, I want to leave that there. This red curly line, I want to leave that there because it makes the page look just a little bit more legit. But this other text and buttons about applying for a license and downloading Adobe Reader, it doesn't help my ruse of downloading a reader update. So all of those things are stuff I'm going to want to delete. So all I do is I click on the little selector arrow that's in the web developer tools in the top left. I just clicked on that. And I'm just mousing over whatever section I'm going to want to remove from this page. So this is one big section here that's all contained in a single div element within the HTML. So you can see when I mouse over that, it highlights it in blue. And when I click on it, it's going to highlight the line that corresponds to that element down there in the lower pane. So then I can go down there and manipulate it. So I clicked on it, and there's that line that is that div class up there, that div element. And when I put my mouse on the correct line, it highlights it again for me in the browser. So now I can just right click on that line and I can choose delete node from the menu that appears. When I click delete node, that section of the page just disappears just like that. And then I'm just going to repeat the process again, selecting the next section in the page that I don't want it to be there. I'm finding that line that it highlighted for me down at the bottom, putting my mouse over that, making sure that it highlights the correct section on the page. And then I right click and I do delete node again. And there, that one's gone as well. Now this last section on the page, this one behaves a little bit different. So I had to go through this process twice for this website, because whenever I went through and tried to go through the process of turning this into a phishing page the first time, I found that if I deleted this entire section that all of that text is contained inside of, it actually messed up the layout of the page, and that red ribbon didn't expand from the all absolute left of the screen to the absolute right of the screen anymore, and the page just looked really weird. So instead of deleting an entire section for this, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to repeat the process, but I'm going to delete just individual sections that contain the blocks of text and the buttons that I want to remove. So I'm going to delete this section here first that has those 2 buttons in it using the same process. Then I'm going to delete the little paragraph there using the same process. And then after I delete that paragraph, I will actually enable the design mode that we talked about. So you'll see me delete the paragraph, and then I'm going to go into the console just by clicking the console tab that's to the right of the inspector tab down there at the bottom. Any moment. There we go. I clicked on the console. And now I'm going to type in the command to enable design mode. And the reason that I'm doing it this way for this last section of text here is if I deleted that element that contains that text, that was the one that caused the page like dimensions and stuff to all get messed up. So now that I've enabled design mode, I can just click in the text and I get a cursor there, as you can see, and I arrow to the end of the line. I type a space very quickly there, and then I delete the rest of the text. And the reason that I typed the space was to keep some text, some invisible text there that would keep that HTML element intact and not remove it from the, like the parent element, not remove it from the page, so that we kept our layout. Now at this point, I'm going to run the document.body.spellcheck equals false to turn off the spell check, just in case that's affecting anything on the page. I didn't do it to begin with because I knew that, you know, just deleting a bunch of stuff was not going to affect it. Then I go back to the top, and since I've got the design mode still enabled, I'm going to just change the heading on the page to be download the Adobe Acrobat Reader update instead of the text that it originally said, because that doesn't fit my ruse very well. And again, I'm deleting stuff the way that I am. I'm typing from the middle of the text and then deleting the text so that I don't accidentally remove any HTML parent elements while making those edits. Then what I'm going to do is I click on that select arrow down there at the top right of the web developer tools again. And this time I'm going to right click on the blue download Acrobat Reader button. The reason I right click on it is because I don't want to start the download. So I don't want to left click on it and have it accidentally start on me. I want to right click on it so that I can select it down in the bottom without actually activating it. So I'll go back down to the bottom, double click on that line, and then I'll edit it using the original method that I showed of just editing it in the HTML source. I add the word update to it, and now it looks way more like a page that would be hosting a Adobe Reader update. Now I want to make sure this page looks correct on a mobile browser as well. So I'll click the, it's in a little bit different spot in Firefox than it was in Chrome, but I click on the little button in the toolbar to change to a mobile view. And when I click that button, we change to the mobile view, and you see that the headline actually goes back to the way it was. So on this page, the headline is displayed differently for a mobile device. A different part of the HTML code displays it on a mobile device versus on a desktop device. So I'll need to edit here in the mobile view as well. So that way, no matter what type of device the end user opens this on, they will still see the same headline on both pages. So I'm just doing that right now. And then once I've changed that, now we should be good to go. I can change my view around a bit, make sure everything looks good, no matter how, you know, what device I change to or anything. And I can go back to the desktop view. Once I go back to the desktop view, I scroll down, I look, make sure everything looks good. And then I'll use the Save Page WE button up at the top to actually save this all as a single HTML file. Clicking on that button and then saving it. And so now it's that single HTML file that's in my downloads folder there. And I'm going to open that with Notepad so that I can edit the HTML code in it. Because the one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't pointed that button to my payload. You know, so if they click on the button right now, it's actually not going to do anything. So I want it to download a payload. And in this case, my payload is just going to be the BHIS website URL. What I want to do is I want to go back over here into my web developer tools in the browser and figure out how to find that button and all that HTML text you just saw in Notepad. So I use the inspect element tool again, and I select the button just to find where that button is in the HTML and find a unique string in the button code that I can use to find it in Notepad. So I'm using that class equals btn dash primary there. I just copied that so I can go back over to the Notepad window and then use the find feature to find that button in this wall of nonsense. So once I've found the correct line down here at the bottom, you see there's the button. I add a on click element to, or attribute to it. And that on click attribute is going to make it so when the button is clicked, it's going to run just a little bit of JavaScript, top location equals, and then the URL that I want it to go to. In this case, it's going to be the BHIS website. So once I've made, whatever changes that I want to make to the HTML, in this case, it's just changing that link. I just save the document, just highlighting that there to show off the change that I made. And now it's good to go. So now I'll close that out. I'll minimize Firefox, and I'll just double click on the landing page to open it in Edge. I always recommend checking out in multiple browsers. So this is how it looks in Edge, the saved, final version of the landing page. And when I click the button there, it's going to go back to, or it's going to go to the URL that I had just put into it in Notepad. And there it is. It now points to BHIS. It could point to an exe file or whatever you wanted it to point to. So not terribly difficult, pretty solid way to make a landing page. And now I'll just jump back to my slides if I can find them. Okay, here we go. So this is just a really easy way to make a landing page. I'll point that out. So there's still some other considerations that you need to think about whenever you are building a phishing campaign and using this to build your landing page. So you still got to host it somewhere. So a recommendation that I have there is don't use typo squatted domains generally. Especially not the domain of your target. Maybe if you're going to typo squat somebody, use typo squat somebody else. But if you typo squat your target, there are services out there that can detect typo squatting, and a lot of our red team customers subscribe to those services and they get alerted, and then they just block our website, and this doesn't work at all. The other thing I recommend is that you give the page a unique file name or URL, so that way it won't be found by any automatic crawlers or scanners. There are several services online that what they do is they just they watch for new websites to come up, new web servers, new domains. And when they see them get registered, when they see a new certificate get registered, or just because they're scanning the entire space of the IPv4 internet, they identify pages that have content that is cloned from another website. And if it is cloned from another website, like Microsoft's website, for example, then they notify the ISP or the CSP, the cloud service provider, who owns that IP address. And then there will be a takedown notice sent to that ISP or CSP, and our phishing server will go down. And this has happened on a couple of phishing exercises in the last year, where we kind of learned the lesson the hard way. Not to let landing pages be, just exposed where just a scanner or something could find it. So if you just give it a unique file name or URL, that's usually enough to keep a random scanner or something from finding it, as long as it's not one that will be guessed. No index.html, no admin.html. And then the last recommendation I got here is to use JavaScript or server-side scripts to modify the behavior based on operating system of the visitor. So I already mentioned if you have somebody trying to download your payload and it's a mobile device, you want to change the page so that it displays a warning and says, oh, you can't do this on a mobile device. You may also want to maybe use some server-side scripts, for example, to prevent the page from being even shown if it's visited by a bot. Anything with like bot in the user agent is a good giveaway. There's if you watch the user agents that come in your log, you'll see a bunch of others. that are obviously bots, and you can filter for those. You can also filter for IP address ranges of those security services that are out there scanning the internet for phishing pages. And then for the defenders who might be watching, I wanted to have something here for you too. So I'll quickly touch on the defenses against this. Honestly, this is the same old like regular phishing that we've been doing forever. So all the same old phishing still applies. This is just a really like high return method for us as attackers to create the landing page and get it done in a reasonable amount of time, and to provide more time in a red team exercise for us to do more attacks, so that we spend one day building the landing page instead of 3 or 5 or whatever it may be, especially in the case of one we have to translate into Spanish. But those old defenses, as far as the like typical phishing attacks, still apply, like I said. So train your users to scrutinize any incoming communications or links of any kind, as I mentioned, including those that come in the mail. Implement strong communication filtering controls where you can. So, filter your email, make sure like all incoming email is coming from a domain with a strong reputation. It has SPF and DKIM, or some other means of verifying that it's supposed to come from the domain it comes from, and block external Teams messages and stuff like that. Any way that you can lock stuff down to only legit communications, definitely lock it down. And then last of all, implement a content filtering proxy with an allow list configuration specifically, so that way it only allows sites with an established acceptable reputation. So that's like you go into your configuration for that proxy, you've got a bunch of categories in there. Maybe you allow business websites, or you allow health or government websites. And those are only when you specifically allow them does it allow the website to be shown. So if the website is in a bad category, or more importantly, if the website is not in a category at all, it's a brand new website and it hasn't been categorized yet, it shouldn't be accessible to end users, because those are the ones that we really frequently abuse, is the ones that just don't have a category at all. And on top of that, you can also, if you want to go the extra mile, block commonly abused domains and IP addresses. There are some like certain domains that are frequently abused by real world attackers and red teamers alike. And if you just block those domains outright, you're going to prevent a lot of phishing attacks. So, start watching for those, and you're going to have to, this is going to be on a per organization basis, because some organizations may use some of those domains or use websites that are on some of those domains. But yeah, be figuring those out for your organization, what makes sense, what's not normal, and then block those ones that are frequently abused. And that's the end of this webcast. Thank you all for attending. Like I said, I'll stick around for a couple of minutes if we got any time left to answer any questions we've got. And if this was interesting to you, I hope it was. I've probably got some more content out there that might be interesting to you too. So I've got some links here in the slides, if you download the slides, to my account on X and my account on GitHub, where I share other stuff that I come up with, or that I found interesting that maybe somebody else came up with. There's a link to me in particular on the BHIS blog here, but just anything on the BHIS blog in general is great. I recommend following it. And of course, there's a link to my class here, because as I said, this content was based on a few of the slides in the class. This was a bit more of a deep dive on this than I do in the class. But if this is useful to you, especially as an attacker, or maybe even as a defender, that's learning how the things that we do work so that you can block it, then the class might be interesting to you as well. So I encourage you to check out that link there. But with that, that's all I got.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge with us, as always, man. It's always so like just very much appreciated. I know the students loved seeing it. So
Yeah,
thank
no
you for what you
problem.
do, man. You have time for questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually just
Awesome.
trying to figure out how to stop sharing my slides. I moved stuff around and I don't know where the stop sharing, but okay, I think I got it.
Awesome.
I had a question real quick.
Yeah, go
sure.
ahead, David.
So for Safe Page We, I know I normally go out or go into the source and remove references that Safe Page We drops in there. Is that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that I didn't really have time to get into with everything else. But yeah, absolutely, there are some like telltale signs in the HTML source that say if page we leaves in there, you should check out that. Like that's a fundamental like key thing for all like a lesson that it applies to all pen testing or red teaming is look at what your tools generate and uh, then make it so they don't generate things that are they're like dead giveaways like that. So some of that stuff is stuff that I talked about in the class too. Another example, like this is a really big example, is the X Evil Jinx header that Evil Jinx sends to servers whenever you're doing adversary in the middle phishing with Evil Jinx. And I think a lot of people don't know about because they haven't inspected and looked at the traffic that their hacking tool is generating. But you can remove that header too. And yeah, that's actually one of the things I was pretty happy to put in the class was how to go about removing that header. But yeah, definitely, you always want to fully test all attacks from the perspective of anyone on the other end of the attack, be it the end user that's going to be receiving the communications and visiting the website, but also from the defender's point of view, who's going to be investigating this. You know, what are they going to see that's going to give away what you did?
Yeah, I was hoping I'd missed an option somewhere, but I've never been able to remove that stuff automatically from the resulting page.
Yeah, I haven't ever even looked for an option to remove it. To be honest, I just go in there and because I'm usually going in there and editing to add a little bit of JavaScript anyway. Because I throw some stuff in there like filtering based on user agent, so that what I'll do is I'll add some JavaScript so that the download button doesn't actually populate with a link unless a few JavaScript like qualifiers execute. So it's just a stronger signal that it's not a bot. It's not a perfect signal. It's not a bot, but it's stronger than just the user agent itself. And yeah, while I'm in there doing that, I just usually delete it.
Awesome, man. So I'll go through a couple questions that we have here. Gonna start way back. So you were talking about like physical mail, and people are asking if you could share some of your physical mail efforts, like how to verify forged physical mail. If you have any suggestions there.
Yeah, like that's specifically why I choose physical mail is because it is difficult to verify or to like prevent. So I guess from the defender point of view, you know, my reaction to that is like if it's someone from the blue team who is asking for a company, you know, they're going to be kind of screwed because they're not going to be able to do anything when it comes to the mail that comes to a person's house. For your end users, for the people who like are actually receiving the mail at their house, the phishing stuff that we send in the mail looks almost identical to real stuff that I receive in the mail like regularly. Because I'll receive something that's like, you are a member of some class action lawsuit. Visit this website to opt in because you're going to get $100,000 for sure, or whatever. Or it'll be, you know, maybe it's like, welcome to the neighborhood. Scan this QR code to download this app on your phone and join the neighborhood, whatever thing. I've seen so many of these things come in the mail that look, I mean, it's identical to the stuff that we're sending for phishing attacks. So the advice there is don't trust any of that stuff. Like the thing that I tell my dad, because my dad's not a very technical person when it comes to computers. He's terribly technical when it comes to some other stuff, but just not with computers. But what I tell him is I'm like, nobody wants to give you anything for free. There will never actually be a stranger out there in the world that doesn't know your name that wants to give you money or a gift card or whatever it is. Like everything has a price. So if you don't know the price that you're paying for something, then that's a red flag right there. Like if it looks like you're about to get something for free, then that like you're not. You are the target. It might just be the target of advertising, or it might be the target of a phishing attack, but you are the target, and like that's a huge red flag. So yeah, anything that comes in the mail that has a URL, a QR code, or promises you something, give it like the highest level of suspicion.
Unless it's anti-siphon training, because we like to give away training.
Do we send stuff in the mail? Because
no, but somebody put like except for BHIS, but I'm like, yeah, except for us too, because we like to do like the pay what you can stuff and give it away all the time. I guess that just costs people their time. So Yeah, that's what it cost you.
Okay, there may be like small exceptions. The exception proves the rule. So there are
Right.
like that's how every rule is. There is some exception to every rule, and that's basically how hacking works. So the exception proves the rule. The rule will keep you safe. Like if you here's the other thing is it fails safe. You always want to make sure your stuff fails safe. This is something else I'll talk about in the class when it comes to our attacker infrastructure. So if you screw up and you accidentally pass up the opportunity to get that $50 gift card that you would have actually got because it was some good Samaritan, big deal. You're out a $50 gift card that one time in your life. But following the rule saves you the other 99.9% of the time when it's not like some good Samaritan like John Strand at BHIS that wants to give away everything for free all the time.
Joff told me this in a story when we were at KernelCon, where a long time ago, I guess they sent out like some kind of coupon for like a sporting goods store or something to get their target. And then like I guess it went out to a lot of people, this coupon in the mail, and people started like going to that store to try to claim the coupon, and it wasn't even real. And they got in a lot of trouble for that. It was
I've heard of similar situations too, where like people would send a fish that had a coupon in it to some company, to all their employee email addresses, but then people would forward that to their family members, and like they were getting shells on all these computers that were out of scope. You got to watch out for that stuff.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. This person asked, what would be a good URL to not get detected? Can you provide an example?
So a URL to not get detected, like in the case of those scanners that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So I guess the number one thing to begin with is that you want your default content to be something that's not going to get flagged at all. So you do want to have an index.html or whatever in there that everything sees when it browses to that server. In fact, what I like to do is I like to set up a redirector as the default content. And I like to also set that not only as the default content, but the default error page. So that way I set up my fake domain, and literally any URL that they give it that's not my specific unique URL redirects to the real company that I'm impersonating, their real website. Then the URL that I'll use actually a series of folders to make it more legit looking in the browser, and also more unique, because they're not going to scan through the root folder to find it. They got to know the folder name. I mean, like doing a scan like a Durbuster or something. I don't even know if that's still a tool. That will, not find it most likely if it's in a seeded folder. And then it's just based on whatever my ruse is supposed to be. So if I'm sending out a ruse where it's Amazon gift card for a specific company, it might be like, let's say my domain is giftcardsrus.com. It might be / that company name / gift card / and then maybe it could be giftcard.html. It could be maybe gift card - today's year and month.html, anything like that. Because those are all like, they're not terribly random, but they make sense when someone sees it in their address bar, that person's not going to say, why is it just a long string of numbers and letters? And even if it is just a long string of numbers and letters, if you put it in the right context, we see that stuff all the time. Like, PHP sesh ID equals whatever, or JSES ID equals whatever in your browser. So it could be anything.
I'll commonly use like UUIDs in the path as a form of tracking, so I know exactly who clicked on my link when I lack other tracking features.
That's a great way to do that.
Do you guys have any thoughts on using Bitly to create short URLs and QR codes for links?
Yes and no. I mean, if it makes sense for your ruse, then it works really well for sure. The bad thing about Bitly, in my opinion, is, well, one, it could be seen as fishy depending on who your target audience is and what your alternatives are. So, everything's a choice of like, what's the best alternative you can go with. So if you got a really good domain and it makes sense and it fits your ruse, then that would be less fishy than Bitly. But if you have a really crappy domain and it doesn't fit your ruse, then Bitly would be a really good alternative. But the other thing about Bitly is you don't really have control of, one, who is logging who visits this page. You don't know, is Bitly themselves, are they inspecting the page or maybe shipping that information off to one of these security services? Because there's a lot of information sharing going on between the companies that do those scans and other third parties. I know that there are for sure DNS domain or DNS service operators that are operating like DNS servers you could configure as your own DNS servers, that your computer uses for lookups to those those security services, so that they can use that as a way of discovering malicious websites. Because then if somebody let's say it's OpenDNS, for example, and they have the OpenDNS DNS servers configured on their computer and they browse to a malicious site, and they're the first one to ever visit that site, that just informed the security service that website exists. And same, like it's even worse, for something that knows that a specific URL exists. So that's a concern. But also you can't edit the URL typically with those URL shortening services afterward, or meaning you can't edit the target. So something that I do a lot on phishing exercises, especially ones that I send through the mail, is I set up a redirector somewhere. The initial URL that I'm sending people to is actually a redirector. And that redirector I have full control over. So that way, if something happens, like it takes a week, for example, for the postcards that I send out to land in people's mailboxes, maybe in that week, my phishing infrastructure gets detected and it goes down, or something changes and it doesn't work anymore. By sending them a redirector URL that I have full control over, all I got to do is stand up new phishing infrastructure and point that redirector to the new one, and the same old QR code works. So, I don't have to worry like, oh, I sent out 10 postcards and the QR code that's printed on them that I can't change, it now points to a server that got taken down because I got, a cease and desist from whoever. I have the ability to change that. And a lot of times with the services like Bitly, you don't have the ability to change that. So that's one reason I don't use them.
Thank you, sir. How much more time do you have for questions also?
I got all the time in the world, actually.
All the time in the world. I think we could probably go another like 4 minutes or so, and then we'll kick off to our breakout room, and we'll go from there. So I'll go through the rest of the questions that we can. So Ruben asked if there are any extensions that can validate any URL from the source or that compares two pages. Anything like that?
There was an extension at one time. First, let me start by saying I haven't looked into this really at all. So I don't know. There could be. I haven't looked into that kind of thing in quite a while. But there was an extension at one time that might still be out there that the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, had made. I'm pretty sure it was them. That what it was doing, it was checking for malicious. I think it was malicious Tor exit nodes, basically. But it was some kind of malicious interference on the internet, where you would visit a website and it would do exactly what you're suggesting. It would look at the website that you're seeing, and then it would look at the content that had been provided to it by other people browsing with the same extension, and it would see, is everyone in every region getting the same website, or is this website something completely different to people in other areas? So the long answer to that is, that may still exist. That might still be out there. It'd be worth looking into, but I haven't looked into that stuff in quite a while.
Thank you. So this person was asking a question. This is more towards the end of your slide, though. But do you utilize this method to create fishlets for adversary in the middle phishing attacks for MFA bypass? If so, do you use a custom tool or something like EvilJinx?
Yeah. So. For adversary in the middle phishing, I don't use this technique. Not this that I just showed how to build the landing page. And the reason is because it's not in and of itself, it's not like multi-factor enabled. So that's the cool thing about EvilJinx is, if they got multi-factor authentication on their account, then they go through the whole real login process because they're logging into a real login portal that's just being proxied through that tool. So we don't have to actually edit the landing page really at all unless we choose to with EvilJinx. All I really do is I set up a redirector after they log in to redirect to whatever makes sense for my ruse. So after they log into their Microsoft 365 login, for example, then they're redirected to a page that, gives them their Amazon gift card that I promised them. So for adversary in the middle, yeah, this really doesn't apply so much. I mainly use this for payload phishing. Whenever I've got like an exe file, a MSI file, zip file, whatever it may be, some kind of file or like a click once application that we want them to execute on their workstation. And that's what this works well for. Because in those situations, we need to make a page that says something different than like in the adversary in the middle, we want them to see the real login page. In this case, I don't want them to see the real download page. I want them to see a modified version of the download page. And the other thing is I want them to download that file. So I need to provide them with a link or something to do that. And that's something that adversary in the middle tool doesn't typically do.
How easy is it to get a new site, a reputation, or a category with the web security vendors?
In my experience, it's pretty easy. So you set up a new domain, put some content on it that makes sense for your category, and then if you do a web search for like filtering web proxy, categorization, or domain reputation, those kind of things, you'll find several websites out there. What they do is the vendors of those products let you look up and see what the category of a website is. And then if you are the owner of that website, then, and like your domain has been miscategorized, then you can submit a request to recategorize it. And the impression that I get is that the response to those requests is mostly automated, because what I do if I want something categorized is I have all those things bookmarked, all those services that do that kind of categorization. And I just open all I click, right click the folder of bookmarks, open all in tabs. They all open up for me. And then one by one, I paste in the URL of my phishing site, and I change the category to whatever I want, and I submit it. And I go on to the next one and I do that. And then a day or two later, I come back and check, and several of them will already have a different category. But the other thing that I like even better than that, which saves me from doing all that work, is to just put my website behind a CDN and then use the CDN to be the URL that I give to the people who I'm phishing. And what that does is that makes my website have the reputation of the CDN. So like AzureEdge.net, for example, if I was using that to phish, I would get, whatever string that I've chosen, whatever name, like, giftcardsrs.azureedge.net. That would be my website. That's what would appear in the browser's, address bar. So I want it to look as legit as possible. But if you go put that into one of those categorization tools, it's going to say whatever the category is of AzureEdge.net, it's that parent domain that actually has the categorization, the reputation, all that stuff. So you don't even have to do all the work of like setting up your reputation and everything else. You just piggyback on theirs.
Awesome. That's such a crafty way of doing it too. I love that.
Yeah, I'm always looking for the easy way.
Yeah, it's legit, man. I'm going to end with this one. It's not a question, but somebody said they work on projects as an intern for red teaming, social engineering. This would help them to excel and receive more projects. So that's good to hear that people are going to be taking what you've just taught them today and apply that to what they're doing out there in the real world. So thank you for joining us today and sharing your knowledge. Thank you, David, for being here as well, Kyle, and everyone else out there. We appreciate you guys. Before we leave, is there anybody here who is Team Simply Cyber? I would love to see you throw the hashtag in the chat, because next week we have Dr. Jerry Auger joining us for an anti-cast. So hope to see you all next week. If y'all have any questions about anti-siphon training, getting started, career questions, things like that, you can join us in the breakout room. You have to have the Zoom application installed on your computer or device, but at the bottom of the screen, you should see breakout rooms, and you can find Kyle and I over there in just a few minutes or seconds here. Join us and ask questions and hang out. So thank you all for joining us today. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see y'all next week. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, everybody.